last part I'd want you to know about the great parables in Matthew 25. In Matthew, Jesus is a rabbi. He is a teacher. In Mark, when we get to that, we'll see that Jesus will have a little saying and then he'll do something. He'll have a little saying and he'll do something. A little saying and he'll do something. Matthew will take all those little sayings and he'll stitch them together. And he has Jesus give us these kind of long and interesting teachings. And parables. You know, a parable is a story that is designed to take you out of your ordinary world and sort of twist it sideways a little bit. Not totally upside down, but twist it sideways enough to make you go, huh. And the parables, particularly in Matthew 25, are like that.
Yeah.
I had a pastor who once told me, if anyone asks you to preach in Matthew 25, they're setting you up.
Yeah.
Don't do it. But I love Matthew 25 now, particularly the one I want you to focus on is the parable of what's called the 10 virgins, or the 10 maidens. And you know, you kind of know this story. It's sort of set up as the Boy Scout parable, where there are 5 foolish and 5 wise, and there's a wedding coming, and it's summer here, so it's sort of wedding season. And they're all waiting one night for the groom to come, but there's a big problem. The wise maidens, and the word for them is sophrosune, which is kind of like clever. It's not wise. Sophos is that word. So they've dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's. They have enough oil, so for their lamps, so they can go out in the middle of the night and it's no problem. The foolish, the moronoi, the morons, the little foolish bridesmaids, don't have enough oil. And the foolish ones go to the wise ones and they say, please, give us some of your oil. And the wise ones say, you crazy bridesmaid, we're not going to give you our oil. Go out and buy some. Like I could go to the Plaid Pantry, the 7-Eleven, in the middle of the night and go get some lamp oil. But the foolish ones, they're so anxious, they're so frightened, they leave in the midst of all of that. The bridegroom comes and takes everyone away, and then the foolish go back, we've been left.
Yeah. Then
they run to the door of the place, they knock on the door, and the door opens and says, I don't know you, and slams, and they're thrown into the outer
darkness. Why do you like this?
I know, because it sounds horrible, right? This is why I love parables like this. Alright, we all hear this as the Boy Scout parable, where be prepared. So like it's all up to us to be good and to have our oil with us and to cross every T and dot every I. So it's all about works. That's kind of how we hear this parable. But we know that Jesus talks about grace, and so this parable gives us this sort of cognitive dissonance of like,
so much so.
Huh? Well, here's another way to hear it. The problem of the foolish bridesmaids is not that they weren't prepared. We think that's the problem, that they didn't have enough oil. That's not why they were foolish. The problem is that when they realize we don't have any oil, they've asked their friends for it, the friends won't help them. The problem is that rather than wait and trust that the bridegroom who is coming would be able to have grace and take them along too, rather than just trust that they in their imperfection are okay. They don't. They're anxious, they're fearful, they try to leave and fix themselves. They try to fix everything. That, I think, is the terrible foolishness of these bridesmaids. It's our foolishness too. Rather than trust in a merciful God that in grace we might be saved through faith. We try to perfect ourselves and are unable to wait upon the Lord. So it's a parable where there are no easy heroes. Because the wise maidens, you think, well, they're so mean. I mean, why couldn't they have given a little bit of oil?
Yeah.
So it's one that I hope makes you think. And even if you disagree with my reading, great. But keep chewing on it and keep thinking. That's what a parable is trying to do to you.
In parables, I think it's really hard to make like a one-to-one correlation, or easy correlations. And I think sometimes we try to,
and we simplify them.
We simplify them to where where they lose their power. But I think, especially with the Matthew 25 ones, and what makes them so hard is that there is not a one-to-one at all. And I think that's how a lot of Matthean parables are.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in Luke, sometimes the parables are a little easier.
And we'll
see that.
certainly epically beautiful.
And beautiful, and equally as challenging, because the heroes are not who you think they are.
Yes.
So they're challenging in a different way.
It's one thing with parables that's fun to do is to try to figure out who the most important character is, and it's often we pick the wrong ones to name. For instance, the parable of the Good Samaritan, or the parable of the prodigal son, for instance, in Luke, that we'll get to. It's really about the prodigal father. The father who blesses prodigally, not the son. We're obsessed. We're often obsessed with the wrong character, and we read it through the wrong lens.
Yeah, it's always also fun to think about who you think you are in that parable.
Yes.
And I think that so determines how you read it.
Yep. Almost always, if you can avoid it, try not to read yourself into the person in the parable who's the hero.
Guess what? You're not the Good Samaritan. I'm just going to tell you right now.
I hate to bust it for you. But Jesus is always wanting us to read it as though we are not the one who has done everything great and is bestowing the grace. We're the ones in need. That's a good kind of clue and way to read any parable.
I think so.
Anything more with Matthew before we move to Mark?
So much so, but we don't have time.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mark.
All right. See you in a bit.
Okay.